Sup lads, welcome back to another video. Now today we're going to be looking at 5 players to replace Jannik Vestergaard, who obviously left the club last week to join Leicester City. I've drawn up 5 centre-backs that we've been rumoured with and given my thoughts and who I think we should sign out of these 5. So, we're going to start off with, I'm probably going to say this wrong, Tosin Adarabioyo. You might remember him playing for Fulham last year. I think they signed him from Man City, actually. Obviously, wasn't getting any game time there. So he moved to Fulham, and I think he was pretty decent. Fulham did go down last year, but their defence was actually quite solid. They had the likes of Anthony Robinson, who was good. He's still there. Joachim Andersen, who obviously has now gone to Crystal Palace for a good £20 million, I think. And Tosin Adarabioyo was another one that was very good alongside Joachim Andersen at the back. So apparently he has a £10 million relegation clause, which means if Fulham got relegated, he could leave for £10 million. And I think that would be a decent price for him, considering I have £30 million to spend. I think we might as well get him in, to be honest. I think he was decent, and he doesn't have to be a first choice. We've got decent centre backs anyway. Salisu is still moulding into the first team slowly and has had very promising games. Jan Bednarek is solid, but last season he was a bit shaky. And Jack Stevens is good as a backup, but not, I would say, as a first choice. So contract until 2023, so they could be in a bit of a rush to sell, because especially if they don't go back up this year. So maybe we could get him in. And I have gone onto SofaScore, if you don't know, it's a good website to check stats and that. And he had an average rating of 6.93 last year. It was which is decent considering Fulham were in around the relegation zone last year. Well, they're pretty much in the relegation zone the whole year, weren't they? But I think he'd be decent signing, as I said, and he'd probably be one of my first choices. Second name we're going to be talking about is Joe Worrell, centre back for Nottingham Forest in the Championship. Valued at around £5 million, I think. I would rather go for Tosin, to be honest. He has Premier League experience, whereas Worrell doesn't. And to be fair, despite being in the Championship, when being rumoured with him, I don't think he's really been a standout for them, Nottingham Forest. I don't think he's been, one of the best centre-backs in the Championship at any time, really. And he has a 6.92 average rating, which is lower than Tosin, despite Tosin playing in a relegation-threatened Premier League side compared to Worrell playing in a quite solid Championship side. So it doesn't look. I would much rather go for Tosin than Worrell. I know Tosin would be more expensive, but I just think Worrell, I think he'd be a bit more risky, and also Tosin's younger. I mean, everything is sweating towards Tosin apart from the price, and Worrell's contract runs out a year later as well in 2024. So I think Worrell's a bit of a no-go, but apparently him and Tosin are our 2 first choice centre backs to replace Vestergaard. So yeah, out of those 2, would rather have Tosin, but Worrell. I think he'd be good for like a Brentford maybe, or a Norwich or a Watford, but not for us, I don't think, if we are trying to be ambitious. The third player we've been talking about is a player we've been heavily linked with is Gary Cahill. Now, mixed opinions from the fans on this. Some people say yes, some people say no, we don't want him. Personally, I think he'd be a good signing. He doesn't have to be a first choice. He can be good as backup, and we do need depth at centre-back, considering we have literally, I think, 3 first-team centre-backs, and that is it. We don't have anyone else, so it's not promising in terms of that, but I think Gary Cahill's 35 years old. I think he's going to be 36 midway through the season. Getting quite old, but he's solid. He's a leader as well, and we don't really have that many leaders in the squad apart from maybe Romeo and Ward-Prowse, who's obviously the captain. But in terms of our centre backs, I don't really see a leader there at the moment anyway. You could argue maybe Jack Stevens, but I think Gary Cahill will be very good for experience there as well. I think all our defenders are below about 28 years of age as well. So, it's good to have a bit of experience in there. And Gary Cahill has obviously won Premier League titles with Chelsea, been to World Cups with England. Albeit he is 35 and he's probably a bit slow now, he's solid. He adds good depth to the centre-back, and I would bring him in. I mean, you can't really go wrong with free transfer, can you? Unless they are absolutely awful and they're on big money. That might be a bit of a problem, to be fair, Gary Cahill's wages, but I can imagine Crystal Palace were paying it last year, so we shouldn't have that many problems with it either. So Gary Cahill, I think, would be a good choice, and it'd be good to get him in. Nat Phillips, the next player we're talking about, obviously filled in at Liverpool for centre-back last season during their centre-back crisis, didn't he? And he did, after a bit of a shaky start, he did come through and play very, very well. I thought he was quite very solid at the back, and was a name we were being linked to right after Vestergaard left, but has the news on that move has quietened down quite a bit, whereas lots of Cahill, Worrell, Adarabioyo, and another name we were about to mention have started bubbling up a bit more. But I don't know. Apparently he cost £15 million, so I'm not a big fan. I think Phillips, despite being the most expensive naming convention so far, would be my first choice. I was quite impressed with him when I saw him with Liverpool last year, and he has a 7.18 average match rating, which is very, very good. So I know you could argue he was playing for a Liverpool team, that are bound to make other defenders play good, but we can't forget, they weren't amazing at the back last year, especially around that kind of winter into spring period. But I think only 24 as well, same age as Worrell, a little bit older than Adrabayal. I think he'd be a good signing for £15 million, and I think him and Tosin would be my two favourites to come in to replace Vestergaard. Contract until 2023 as well, so same as Tosin once again. So, maybe you could argue that Liverpool will be wanting to sell, and maybe he would want to sign a new contract. I definitely think it wouldn't be a loan. I'm pretty sure it would be a permanent deal if we do get him in. The last player we can talk about is another player that was at Liverpool last season, Ozan Kabak. Obviously, we loaned in for the second half of last season from Schalke, who had an abysmal season in the Bundesliga, didn't they? And to be honest, I wasn't that impressed by Kabak last year when he was at Liverpool. I thought he looked quite shaky, quite nervous, and quite raw. Obviously had an awful Euros with Turkey as well. It hasn't been a great 12 months for him, has it? Playing for that Schalke side, playing for that Turkey side, is it? But a lot of fans still want him in. I'm not a big fan, to be honest. I don't think we should sign him. I'm not sure exactly how much he'd cost. His value on Transfermarkt is £22.5 million. I definitely don't think he'll cost that much. But he's been linked to likes of Leicester, but they probably won't get him now, so obviously they got Vestergaard. But yeah, I think I just wouldn't go Kabak, to be honest. I think he would be a bit of a risk, and I'm not sure he's quite ready for Premier League football yet. Contract until 2024 as well, so they're not going to let him go on the cheap unless he has some sort of relegation clause like Tosin did. And a 6.72 average rating over the last 12 months, which is very poor. I can't lie. The second lowest was Joe Worrell with 6.92. So I think Ozan Kabak is a bit of a no-go. 6.72 as I said. And that's despite playing for a decent Liverpool team, albeit, as I said, he did play for a poor Schalke and Turkey teams over the Euros and the first half of the Bundesliga season. So, it's not promising. I won't go for Kabak. And the names I would go for, I'll get Gary Cahill in. I think that's a pretty certain thing. Free transfer, experience, and who had good depth to the centre-back position. And the other player I'd go for, if I'm being realistic, I'd go Tosin, but I would try and push for Nat Phillips first. I think if we can't get him Phillips, we'll go for Tosin. But I think Tosin Adrabaya is the more likely now. I think... I haven't heard too much about Nat Phillips, but things could change very quickly. I think he could. Nat Phillips talks might start again in this week, but who knows? I think Gary Cahill is a certainty, and I think Nat Phillips or Tosin Adrabaya would be my proper choice to replace Vestergaard. So, yeah, that's it for today's video, guys. 5 players to replace Jannik Vestergaard. Let me know in the comments if they are enabled who you would go for in this position. I'm always interested to hear your guys' thoughts, so let me know down below. Sorry for not doing match reaction to the Everton game, by the way. I was a bit busy after that game, so I didn't really have time, and I didn't even watch the game either, so I think it would be a bit unfair if I did do a reaction to that. But I am going to the Man United game at the weekend, so I'll try and get a bit of footage from that game up, and I'll try and maybe do a match reaction as well, so that'll probably be a bit later though, considering I'm going to the game. So I'll try and get the match reaction up for that, as well as a few clips for you guys. But yeah, thank you very much today, guys, and I will see you soon.